Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm a day late. I know, so bad. But the truth is, Thursday, I fucked up. I missed my group coaching call. Not entirely. Luckily, one of my alumni students messaged me. She's like, "Do we have a call today?" And I saw the message like 45 minutes after the call was supposed to start. Luckily, we were able to wrangle at least half the group, do a call. But what I did in order to, make it right, is that I did a secondary call the next day. So then it just kind of compressed my day yesterday, just having that pocket of time not allotted for the podcast. And then I went and saw the Michael Jackson movie last night with my old roommate. It's so informal to call him my roommate because he really is like a soul brother. We have this connection with music. He won a Juno, which is the Canadian equivalent essentially of a Grammy. And we share this love of music and personal development and spirituality, and we haven't seen each other in a few months, so we made an evening of it, and we went and had dinner and a great conversation, and then we went and saw the movie, and I was just so emotional after it that the idea of hopping on and recording a podcast was just not going to happen. And I just needed some time to digest that and the moon in Scorpio, and I have a Scorpio moon, so I've been feeling it, not in a bad way, but just like very, very alive. There's a lot of things that are alive in me right now, and I needed to kind of let that digest a little bit before I hopped on. And this morning I taught my monthly writing class, and I love these classes because like they're so simple, and yet they end up taking us in these really beautiful directions. And I gave them a prompt today around following this thread of truth. Given that we're in Scorpio moon, full moon energy, and Scorpio is very much the truth teller, the truth exposer, more likely, is the accurate term. And it plummets us right down to the very bottom of all the places that we don't want to look at, and the things that we don't want to face, and the truths that we would rather ignore. And it shines a light, especially a full moon, like it's an illumination into those spaces. And so I gave them a prompt to work with today to explore that terrain. And it ended up leading us into a conversation about shame and self-expression. And so I wanted to kind of pull on those threads today with you as well, because these conversations about truth are some of the most powerful conversations we could ever invest ourselves into, whether they're conversations with ourselves about truth, whether they are conversations in our relationships that require truth, whether that is, conversations and about truth in any other area of our life. So maybe in the areas of our health and wellness, or our money, or our career, or any area, our artistic expression, whatever the area of life is, like it's always well worth your time to do a truth inventory. And I would always recommend doing this on a more regular basis. As someone who has 3 planets in Scorpio, I can't really avoid this, although I try. Sometimes I really do. Like play this game of chicken with myself of how long can I go avoiding the truth that I need to face. And all it does is create a lot of chaos, a lot of tension, and it delays blessings. It delays opportunities when we refuse to look at the truth. And one of the reasons why people don't like to look at the truth is because once you look at something and once you name it, you can't unknow it. And if we would rather stick our heads in the sand and pretend that everything's fine when it's not, the truth is going to be really offensive to those types of patterns. And so a lot of people will avoid the truth because it is so clarifying, because it is so illuminating. And then we are left in this spot of, if I keep running this pattern, if I keep doing the thing that I'm doing, now I'm consciously choosing that. And so I can no longer be victimized by the outcome of my own choices and my own behavior. Whereas when we keep our heads in the sand, we can easily hook into that victim consciousness because we're like, oh my God, life's happening to me. Why is everything so terrible? Not realizing that there's often threads of truth that we are avoiding and overstepping and ignoring and dismissing, that if we were to take a look at, our whole world and our whole life would probably start to transform. Because in that moment that you kind of have this truth bomb, this truth telling with yourself, it creates an opening. And in that opening, you start to feel your creative energy come back online. And in order for your creative energy to fully manifest in a new outcome or a more expanded outcome, we require expression. So truth is like the first stop on the bus, like telling the truth on ourselves, just getting in right relationship with truth with ourselves. And then that propels us into the next phase, which is expression. And so usually the first stop on the expression train is the emotional expression. So we might have an emotional release. We might have certain emotions that we have suppressed that we need to now express. And once that clearing happens, it can take us into expression of words, so communication. Sometimes expression with our movement, and like our bodies will need to move in a particular way. And then obviously the expression in terms of new action. So whenever you're taking a new action, that is actually the thread of expression. It's just a particular type of expression. And when we can stack all four, so our words, our emotions, our movements, and our actions, then we are priming the terrain for new creation to come into form, whether that's a new possibility inside of a relationship, whether that is a new pathway for your career or your artistry, whether that is actually being able to lock in a new habit or way of being with yourself. And this is why a lot of people, like, they can't stick with their new creations, or their creations fall flat, is because they're trying to step over these two very important aspects before they go in. Like they're trying to skip over that so that they can just get right into creation, right into the good stuff. You know, there was a song in the 2020s, it was viral on TikTok, of like, let's just skip to the good part. And it makes sense. During the pandemic, people just wanted to fast forward and like, let's get to the good stuff again. But that is a very common pattern with human beings. They want to skip to the good stuff. They don't want to deal with the real stuff. And the more we avoid dealing with the real stuff, the more we delay actually getting to the good stuff. I know it's an uncomfortable and inconvenient truth. A lot of truths can be. They can be really inconvenient because they challenge these paradigms that we've just accepted as truth. And a lot of them aren't. You know, a lot of the things that have been given to us to believe aren't actually rooted in the frequency of truth. And that can be a really big mindfuck when we start to unravel that. And I think that's why a lot of people don't. If I'm completely honest, I think sometimes it is more of a self-preservation thing of On some level, the soul might be protecting that human from the psychological break that might happen for them when their entire world and paradigm is blown open and you're like, newsflash, everything you know is a lie. This just in. That can be very, very confronting for someone who has not a super strong internal sense of self. And so obviously, if you're here, that is not you. Like you would never have found me, and you would not enjoy my presence in the world if that is kind of the path that you're walking. My path that I walk is one that is really deep, and it's really rich, and it's, constantly going into the underbelly of everything and taking a flashlight in there and being like, what is going on in here? And taking inventory. What's working? What's not working? And so when we have these conversations of looking at the truth that we are avoiding, they can be really confronting at first, but once you get the hang of it, it's not as confronting anymore. People think doing shadow work is so scary. And the shadow is just the parts of you that you aren't in approval of, the parts of you that have been exiled. And the longer we exile them, the more afraid we get to open those doors. Not realizing that what has been exiled is often really tender, vulnerable parts when you turn on the lights. And in order to really sit with all of that, we do have to essentially de-shame ourselves and de-shame our lives, because so much of what we believe about ourselves is coded with this thread of shame, which is why I think for a lot of people, they don't want to look at their shadow because it brings up shame. Instead of being able to just say point blank cleanly, yep, I didn't tell the truth there. Or, yep, I definitely misrepresented myself there. Or, yep, I did not do what I said I was going to do. To be able to just say it cleanly requires you to be de-shamed from the inside out. Luckily for you all, this is one of my areas of expertise. So if you want to learn how to do this, you come get in my world, and it's an experiential relational thing. You often, I've never seen it happen where someone can de-shame themselves in isolation. Because the thing about shame is that, and I told this to my women this morning, it's not something that you're inherently born with. You don't come earthside with a shame program running. Nobody does. Shame programs are injected aftermarket. So after your earthside, that's when it gets injected, and it gets injected relationally. It always comes from somebody else. And it's usually their shame that was injected into them, and then it just gets passed down. And then you also have shame that's coded into the infrastructure of society, and it's used to police and manage large groups of people. So you are getting that injection from people in those systems as well, in those systems and belief systems. So it makes sense that when we are de-shaming, at least the beginning stages of de-shaming require relationships. They require you to be in relationship with someone who can actually bring a de-shaming lens, who can bring the alchemical energy, who can bring the approval frequency through their interactions with you, through their communication with you, through their expression inside of that relationship. Because you learned shame through these relational experiences and through expression, and you just don't have a code for what de-shaming looks like. You haven't been given the key to unlock that program and boot it out. And so we often need that to happen in relationship first. Like I said, I'm not saying that that's the only way. I'm just saying I have never seen someone do this in isolation. And I have been deep in, the literature of relationships and the study of human beings, society, groups of people, individuals for well over 25 years. And I just haven't come across it yet. So in the grand scheme of things, maybe it's possible. I'm not going to say it isn't. But the large majority of people are going to require another human being to unlearn shame, to be able to have those disconfirming experiences that give them a new code of self-approval. So if you really struggle with shame, and the thing is, if your expression is compromised, so if you have a hard time speaking up for yourself, if you have a hard time telling people your needs, if you have a hard time expressing your boundaries or your desires, that's a shame issue. And so you've got to get in the rooms and get in connection with people who understand how to unlock that so that you can liberate your expression. Because once that new program gets in there and you start to kind of shake off that shame, and you're like, wait a second, that was just an aftermarket feature. One of the women on the call today, she's like, I did not consent to this aftermarket upgrade. I'm like, girl, none of us did. None of us did. And so this is why we have community. This is why we have containers like this, so that we can have deeper conversations. We can talk about the things that really matter. And we can de-shame it out in the open. Because once someone can bring what they're actually thinking and say it out loud and be like, yeah, I didn't consent to that, and have that met with approval, yeah, you didn't. All of a sudden, it opens the system. And once that opening happens, now there's more room to express what's underneath that shame. And there's always going to be a backlog of emotions, of thoughts, of movements. When we go into a stress response or a trauma response, our system locks up. And in order to kind of get everything in coherence again, because it's not just the mindset, it's not just the emotional work, it's not just the relational work, it's also working with the body so that the body becomes more fluid and mobile again. It can be responsive to life. Most people's bodies are not responding to life. They're not in coherence with their mind and their emotions. The mind is usually dominating, running the entire show. And then the emotions are getting suppressed and pushed to the sides, sometimes pushed into the dungeon. We're not dealing with you. And then the body gets locked up. And so when we start doing this type of work, I work on all of these levels for a reason. Because to only work with one is an incomplete system. And I would rather have you set up so that when you fly the nest, you've got what it takes to fly the nest, and you're set. You've got what you need to create your relationships really powerfully, to create your business or your art really powerfully, to create your communities really powerfully, to design a life that feels true and authentic to you. That is very hard to do when the system itself is not in coherence. We talked about this at the beginning of the year. I was on that tangent then too. And so what I'd really love for you to explore today is also that relationship to truth. What is the truth that you've been avoiding? And what is the impact that it's had on you by avoiding it? What kind of gets in the way of you even admitting that to yourself? And just get it all out. So the process of just thinking about the question and then taking pen to paper. Pen to paper is a form of expression. You're starting to move the energy, and it's starting to shift the system so that these thoughts, these energies, these emotions can start to live somewhere outside of you. And you're never going to be able to transform an area that you're avoiding without acknowledging that you've been avoiding it. That's always the first step of true transformation. You see this a lot in the personal development, spiritual world, relational development, where people want to skip to the good part. They want to just focus on, well, let me just feel good all the time. Okay. And some people need to do that. They need to go down that path and experiment and then crash and burn from it, because it's not sustainable if the foundation underneath is not stable and strong. And so the work that I do, it creates this rock solid foundation for you so that you actually have the internal capacity to go inward and face yourself fully. You're like, okay, the world's not going to fall apart. And this is what I said to every single woman on the call today, because every single one of them, they were not happy with me when I gave them their writing assignment today. They were like, fuck this. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. I was not thrilled about it either. But that's where we're going. And all of them were such good sports. And a lot of that has to do with the insane amount of rapport and trust that has been built over the time that we have been working together. Some of them have been with me for a very long time. Some of them are relatively new to me. But there's this sense of safety and trust and rapport that has been built. And so even when parts of them flare up and they're like, fuck, I hate this assignment. I hate that you're asking us to do this. They still do it. They're still willing to play. And then once they came out of the writing section, I just presence to everyone. I'm like, just for the record, all of you did not want to do this assignment, and you did it. And guess what? All of you are still here living and breathing. Nobody died. Because sometimes it's that extreme in our system. Our system thinks, it like alerts us so much that part of us thinks that we are going to die if we confront this truth that we've been avoiding. And so that becomes the kind of escape hatch for us. Like, this is so high sensation, it must mean danger. But actually, the high sensation is all of the old protection patterns, all of the old mechanisms kind of sniffing out that if you do tell the truth on yourself, you are going to put yourself on a whole new trajectory, which means you are evolving through those patterns. You are upgrading those patterns, which makes them obsolete. And so they are going to fight tooth and nail. They are not going to go quietly. And they often will stop you just with high sensation. If that doesn't work, anxiety is a good one. If that doesn't work, like overthinking, and that usually will trigger some anxiety and some dysregulation and high sensation in the body. So all of it comes down to the inability to hold sensation in the body without making it mean anything. At least not making it mean something that's disempowering to you. Because I think as human beings, we're always making meaning. And it's important to assign meaning that actually empowers you. And I just gave you a frame for that. So if you missed it, just rewind and go listen to the last 3 minutes. And so when we have these frames that are neutral or empower us in some way, shape, or form, it allows us to go into these spots that our protector parts are really trying to get us to continue to avoid. But we cannot have the life of our dreams. We cannot have our dreams. We cannot have the relationship that we truly desire if we do not face the truths that we've been avoiding. Because it takes so much of your creative energy to maintain the inauthenticity. So every place where you aren't telling the truth, whether it's just on yourself or in your relationships or in your business, wherever it is, it's an open loop, it's an energy leak. And when energy is leaking, then your system has to work twice as hard to generate the energy because it's spilling. And that's how people burn out a lot of the time, or, they're trying to make things happen. They're using a lot of force, a lot of grinding, a lot of pushing, because there are so many leaks in their infrastructure, in their foundation. And so one of the best ways to start really patching up that foundation is looking at your relationship to truth and being able to tell the truth on yourself and be able to face the truths that you are avoiding. And when we can do that, we now get to hop on to the next stage of the journey, which is expression. And knowing how to express yourself in a way that honors you, but also honors the relationships you have and the things that you want to create is a skill set that we often need to learn. And again, it's often one that is modeled in relationship. And I'm doing a 4-week group coaching container that starts on May 8th. And we're going to test drive this. I've been really feeling the vibe of doing a small container focused on expression and navigating those seasons and chapters of change. So if you are on the edge of change, there's something that you want to change in your life, whether that is a habit or a pattern, whether that is a relationship in your life needs to change, whether that is something in your business needs to change, or you just want to work on this muscle of self-expression. You want to work on this muscle of emotional expression, physical expression, really getting in right relationship with the truth and doing a little bit of what I like to call sexy shadow work. Because when I do shadow work, we have a lot of fun. It is not a confronting thing. And that's really important to me for people to have a whole new frame on shadow work. That when you admit these things about yourself, I've been having the most hilarious conversations lately because this one part of my shadow is so lazy. Like, she's just a lazy bitch. She's like, nah, I don't want to do anything. And the conversation first started with my mentor, and we were laughing because we both have this lazy energy. She's like, I could be an 8-figure business owner. She's like, but I'm fucking lazy. So I'm good with being a 7-figure business owner. And that's kind of where I'm at. I'm like, yeah, I'm like, I don't really care that much. Like, I don't care about doing the things that I would need to do to have a multi-7-figure business. Even like a 7-figure business at this point. I'm like, I don't know. Like, mid 6 figures is good because it allows me, and this is the thing about getting in right relationship with truth. You start to kind of clean the field. You can admit, like, yeah, there are lazy parts to me. And what if that was okay? What if it is totally okay that there are parts of me that are lazy, that have no desire to build like this 8, 9, 10-figure empire? Like, no. And what's really true is that I desire a very slow life, a life where I get to literally sit with the crows on my balcony and feed them treats, or go on my whimsical weed walks, or have chunks of time throughout my day where I can sit down and just write, whether I'm writing a book, whether I'm writing poetry, whether I'm writing curriculums. I love writing so much. And for me to have a life that is congruent with my skill sets, with my mastery, with my talents and my gifts, I actually require quite a bit of spaciousness. I require quite a slow pace of life. Doesn't mean that I can't create fast, because y'all know, like, when your girl has an idea that comes through, it rips through fast. Like, the channel opens and whoom, there it goes. So I can create things to life really quickly because the dominant pace of my life is actually quite slow. And that's just what's true for me. I'm not saying everybody has to be slow and live like a slow drip life. If you want a life that feels like slow dripping honey, then I think that you should have that. I think that you should take a good long look at everything in your life that's incongruent with that and start making changes. Which, if you need some support, come into the group container, because we will definitely support you there. And when I look at the truth of what I want for myself in my life, I have to really turn down the noise of the social media world and like the boss babe, like hustle, grind, everything amazing, like popping bottles of champagne and like we're going here and then we're going here and we don't ever stop. Like, that actually to my system feels like hell. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with it. There's nothing bad about that. It's not my expression. It is not what's true for me. And if I try and put myself on that track, that's when I get into trouble. That's when things stop flowing. But when I get in right relationship with what I truly want, and I start setting the proper cadence and the proper conditions for that, because a big part of change is creating the proper conditions for it, and understanding the germination process. We understand it when we plant a seed. The next day, we don't have a full harvest. But somehow, when it comes to our dreams or the things that we want for ourselves in our life, we think that, well, I have the clarity now and it should happen tomorrow. But there's actually a germination process, which is why, the women who tend to work with me have more of a desire for a slower paced life. Maybe not as slow as I would like, but a slower paced life that allows for the proper germination and cultivation of the conditions for those seeds to turn into a very fruitful garden. And when we can navigate the kind of incubation process without slipping into comparison or shame or doubt or fear, that's when we're really creating the conditions for what it is that we truly want for ourselves in our life. We cannot just like skip to the good part and expect to have the internal infrastructure built. That's like trying to build a community garden on a toxic wasteland. And like you might be able to like get some plants to sprout, and you probably wouldn't want to eat them if the soil is toxic, right? If we don't have the proper conditions. And so I really want you to take a look at, what is the true thing that I want for myself in my life? And what truths about my life do I have to face in order to be able to express myself and my energy in a more congruent way, so that I can open that portal of creation and start to take action in a way that's really going to move the needle forward. And like I said, if that is a spot that you're in, I don't know if I'm going to offer this 4-week container ever again. I might, I might not. I'm not too sure. I'm in a bit of an experimentation phase where I'm like, this feels fun and exciting and enriching and enlivening for me right now. And I'm going to do it. And I might do it again and I might not. So don't bank on there being another round, because I can't guarantee that there will be. And I did add a payment plan option because I had a couple of requests for that. So you can find that there. I made it very reasonable. It's $6.95 for the 4 weeks. And we have 75-minute sessions every week. I'm keeping it very small, only 9 women in the container, so that I can work with every single person inside the container. That's very important to me. Something you should know about how I work is I like more intimate spaces. I like to know the women that I work with. I want to know their stories. I want to be able to kind of keep a pulse on where they're at. And I love the intimacy and the cohesion and the energetic and emotional ecosystems that start to build in a container like that. So if that is calling to you, please head to the show notes, sign yourself up. I would love to have you. And also just please, 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 for all that is good for you and yourself and your life, do yourself a solid and start looking at the things that you've been avoiding, the truths that you've been avoiding. Love yourself enough to start to look at that material. Love yourself enough to tell the truth on yourself about the type of life that you truly want. And it might be different than what I said. Like, you might be like, the truth is I want to have an 8-figure empire, and I'm willing to do whatever the fuck it takes to get there. I'm willing to move at whatever speed I need to move at. Like, if that's what's true for you, I love that. And I will always champion you. I will always back whatever is true for you. I will not back the things that are built off of ego or image, or I'm trying to maintain a particular image in the world of looking good and avoiding looking bad, or my goals for myself are actually not my own. They're ones that I inherited from the people around me or society, what society has told me I should be. Like, I'm not going to back that. And if you bring me that, I'm going to sniff it out. And I'm going to be like, and we're going deeper. We're going to do some deconstruction so that you can get to the true thing. Even if the true thing is similar to that, I want it to be like the actual transmission of truth for you. Because I think there's a lot of people who are actually artists and creatives who have resigned themselves to not bringing their art through in this lifetime because they don't see how they could practically make a living at it, instead of just devoting themselves to the expression of their art and the creation of it and letting that inform where they go, even if they have a job that is not their art. You still can bring your art into the world. You can still bring your creative mastery into the world. And you don't have to turn it into a business if you don't want to. And there are many different ways that people are going to express and create their gifts into form. And I think it's absolutely tragic how many people are just not willing to do that. And I personally believe that that is one of the things that is going to move the needle forward for humanity in a really constructive way, and could be the difference between the forces of expansion versus the forces of destruction kind of taking over and taking control. So I feel very strongly about backing creation and whatever that creation energy looks like in you, and whatever form of expression is required in order to back your creation into form is what I'm most interested in. And providing the proper conditions, the proper foundation, so that you can express your creations and have them rooted in such a way where they can't be uprooted from you. They can't be destroyed. You can't be taken off your mark because you are so rooted in yourself, and you are so rooted in your emotions and in your relational mastery skills that you can open up this portal of creation and back it fully. So if that is calling to you, please do join me in my container called Express. And all of the information is in the show notes. And if you are loving the show, I would love for you to share it. Share this episode with someone who you know it'll make a difference for. Leave a rating, a 5-star review. If you're on Apple, you can leave me a little review. If you're on Spotify, a 5-star review. You can also comment on the individual episode and let me know what really landed for you, what you're taking away from today. And if you just want to support the podcast, there is an option to donate to the podcast and say thank you and contribute in that way as well. All of that is in the show notes. And I hope you have a beautiful weekend wherever you are in space and time. And I look forward to connecting with you if that is the next true thing. Bye, friends.